Milo, is that you?
There, I think I got it. So the problem is, Bruce, I got a new cell phone.
Oh, did you? What'd you get?
Well, it's the same thing. It's the exact same. It's the 7S because my other one busted.
Oh, that's right. You were telling me that you took advantage of some protection plan, and the guy said it could fix, and you said no.
Yeah, well, the guy said it works fine, and I went, yeah. And he says, well, do we need to fix it? He says, no, and then he goes, well, we can't fix that part. We'd have to replace the phone, and I went, yeah.
Yes, that's the whole purpose of the plan, right?
That's why I paid the extra $100 or $200 was so that I could get a new phone when I busted the other one. And he says, so you're going to go ahead? And I went, yeah. And then he goes, you only got 40 days left on your plan. And I went, uh-huh. I'm picking up on that. So anyways, I have yet to figure out how to put it on vibrate. So that's kind of annoying me right now.
Oh.
And it's just a matter of going through, finding the thing.
There's some, well, you had the other one on vibrate, didn't you?
I did, but that was 2 years ago when I turned it on, so now I got to figure out how to turn it on again. That's the problem.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I think the guy we talked to tonight will be able to help me with all.
If not, go to the your guy next door to your office. He'll surely know how to do it.
Oh, he knows how to do everything, but I always feel embarrassed. You know, like every once in a while, I give him a $50 gift card because I feel like
But the question is, how long has he known you?
Well, now we're more friends than we are customers.
Well, there you go. So don't feel embarrassed. He knows what you're like.
Yeah, but that would be like me coming to you and saying, could you drill a new well on my property? We're pals. Just bring all your equipment over here and
sure,
drill away.
Yeah.
All right. So the reason we're here tonight is we're going to talk to a fella named Chris Brimley.
Yes.
And his layout was featured on the cover of our Railroad Model Craftsman, the editor of Railroad Model Craftsman, of course, is none other than our very own Otto Vondrak.
Yes, sir.
And
now, was May his first issue under his guidance?
I don't know. May of 2019?
2019, I think that was his first total under his guidance.
Wow. So there you go. That's cool. So then he picked the perfect guy to be the editor for.
Yes.
Chris Brimley has a 1x7 foot layout called the Hudson Terminal Railroad. And the other day I was there, our buddy Adam Pinellas fired up his phone and showed us, and there was like 7 guys operating this 1 foot by 7 foot layout.
Yes.
And I thought, and he works for ExactRail. And he works for Train Life, and I thought, we got to talk to this guy. So
because it's kind of what this podcast is about.
It is. It's about talking to guys in model railroading. And the only thing we need to do, the last thing we need to do before we go ahead and talk to him is we have to figure out if this is the first podcast we've done since the last one we did.
Okay, just let me check my files and notes here. Yep, sure enough.
Okay, good. We're good to go.
We're good to go.
I'll even go and get him out of the green room.
You're a brave man.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
Come on in out of the green room.
Oh, good. Thank you. I think something died in there.
Yeah, I think
it's got that certain funk about it. We're not quite sure what it is.
I think several things have died in there.
Yeah.
Including some podcasts. So, Chris, where do you live exactly?
I live in Provo, Utah.
Which is near our buddy Adam Pinellas, correct?
Yeah, I'm about 15 minutes north of him.
And how far is Provo from Salt Lake City?
About 45 minutes south.
Okay, so it's that far south. I'm assuming right down on a freeway.
Yeah, just down I-15.
I-15. And where does I-15? So it's I-5 that runs through Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
So is I-15 the next one west? Or
Yeah.
East? I mean?
Yeah, yes, the next one east. So I-15 runs, I think it dead ends at the Canadian border. at the north, and then it runs through Montana, I believe through Great Falls, and then it runs south through Idaho, through Utah, and then it kind of cuts southwest and goes to Los Angeles.
Okay, this is the part of the show where I display my general lack of knowledge for all things concerning the world. So, what other is Salt Lake City and the main urban hub of Utah?
Yes, it is.
Is there any other sizable urban hubs in Utah?
Provo's a decent size, and it's growing quite rapidly. And then to the north, you kind of have Ogden. Most of the population center of Utah is along what's called the Wasatch Front. And
Right.
It's pretty much for almost 100 miles, one continuous city now.
Right, and then beyond that to the north, there's not really much.
Not too much. It starts to break up a little bit, and you get a few smaller cities, and then you get into Idaho.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot out there in the countryside of Utah, is there?
No, once you get out of it, it's pretty wide open. There'll be 50 miles between each city. So,
are you a native Utahnian?
I was originally from Colorado, in the Littleton area. That's where I was born, and then my family moved to Utah when I was fairly young.
Okay. And did you do any of the driving, or did they do most of it?
They did it all. I was too small.
Yeah, well, but early on in the podcast, and Bruce will remember this, we interviewed a fellow named Jason
Rice.
Uh-huh.
Reis. And he was 6 months old when his family moved from Chicago to Des Moines, and he did a lot of the driving.
Did he? A lot of driving, and he talked about he had a smoke going most of the
time. Yeah, he had a cigar going most of the time, yeah.
That's impressive. I'm not that skilled.
Okay, so that never since then. So are you one of these guys? Are you like the rest of us? Have you been a model railroader ever since you were a kid?
I didn't officially get into model railroading until I was 14.
Okay.
So before that, I always liked almost any form of transportation. I was fascinated by trucks, planes, ships, trains when I was a kid. When I was little, trucks were my thing. I love trucks.
Right.
And so when I was small, my toy I was into was Hot Wheels.
Yep.
And my brothers had a train set, and I'd occasionally play with it with my Hot Wheels, but it didn't really grab me much. But then I got into Legos, and Legos was really what kind of spurred me.
Okay.
And then once I was 14, that's when the bug officially bit.
So Lego, do you mind if I ask you how old of a gentleman you are?
I am 39 at the time of recording.
Okay. So you realize you're quite a bit younger than the median age, right?
Yes, I do.
We're having quite a problem right now with our interviews, as we keep running into a large number of people that are not 100 years old.
Okay.
We continually are running into people that are in their 30s and 20s.
Yes. And it's throwing off the whole concept that the hobby is dying because there's no young people in it.
Yeah, the bell curve is way off.
Yeah, like something's off. Either the guys that are figuring out the age are off, or you young guys are holding out on us, or something. I don't know what's wrong.
No, the hobby's dying.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
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 So Legos is what kind of was kind of the first thing that kind of steered you towards model railroading.
Yeah, I love building things, and I would build cities and build trucks and cars and just build. I love to build. And so that's really what started the me building things. And model railroading just was kind of, I got to the age where I started getting a little embarrassed playing with Legos.
Right.
And then I get into playing with toy trains. And so I don't think I really grew up much.
Right.
But it just felt like I wanted more realism, and so model railroading scratched that itch, and it just was the plausible next step of my evolution of me.
Right, and
yeah, you'll enjoy the upcoming 2019 convention in Salt Lake City at the train show, because I'm pretty sure a bunch of the Lego model railroad building groups will be there, and those guys do some amazing stuff.
Man,
they do.
What's happening now with Lego to me is just absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, and I've actually gotten back into Lego now. It's become my hobby from my hobby.
Yeah.
All right.
And what is it? The Brick Model Railroader, I think, is what
Yes.
is it brickmodelrailroader.com?
Brickmodelrailroader.com, I believe is it. Yes.
All right.
Oh, really? Oh,
We'll give those guys a plug.
there we go.
Brick Model Railroad and KL Leifert and those guys all over there doing their. And then, as Jordan says, they're part of PennLug, which is the
Yep.
Pennsylvania Lego
Users group, I believe.
Users Group. Yeah, exactly. So we'll give those guys a plug. So
And then there's the AFOL, Adult Fans of Legos. So
yeah,
Legos are cool.
and
Yeah,
then
they're really starting to appeal to a lot of the older market now too, with some of the things they have.
and there's the
Yes.
there's the AFL of the CIO or something or whatever.
Yes, that's right.
That's a truckers union though,
Oh, okay.
which is another whole podcast altogether. So did you take a break like when you got towards 20 and all that? Like, did you kind of fall out of the hobby again, or?
I did. I mean, I call myself a closet modeler when I was younger, and even through my 20s, most of my closest friends didn't even know I was into it. And so through my teens, I modeled, and mainly, I mean, just here and there was just kits and nothing too exciting. I built just a small 4x8 layout in my teens. But once I got into about when I graduated from high school, I really did kind of put it off to the side for a while.
Right.
And probably it was a good 4 or 5 years that I really didn't do much with it at all.
And do you remember what got you back into it?
Yeah, no, I know very well. It was in college. I was taking some classes, some architecture design classes, and in one of the classes that I was taking, we had to design a house, and then your final project was to build a model of this house. And I'd never scratch built anything before, and so I'm like, okay, I'll kind of figure this out. And I picked up some styrene from the local hobby shop and built this and was pleased with it. And my teacher was looking at it, and he was blown away. And he's like, most college-age kids don't build architectural models this good. And so my head kind of swelled up. I got kind of a little bit of pride there. And so I started thinking, I'm like, I really enjoyed scratch building that. I want to build something else. And so I kind of dusted off a lot of my kits and whatnot that I've built in the past. And by this time, I'd started originally in HO, and by this time I'd kind of switched over to N scale. And I just wasn't happy with anything there, and kind of looked to see what I wanted to do, and just started dabbling with scratch building. And so all I was doing was just scratch building structures, because like I said, I was in architecture. Structures really were the thing that grabbed me the first in the hobby.
Right.
So
you're now in your early 20s. You're into architecture, and all of a sudden you build a 30 by 40 foot layout in a basement or something.
Yeah, exactly like that. No, I mean, at this time I was married now. My wife and I really didn't have any room at all. And so I would just scratch build a structure, throw it up on a shelf, move on, build another structure, throw it on a shelf, move on. And by the time now I get to my early 30s, I'm kind of sick and tired of just building something and not doing anything with it.
Right.
And some I'd sold to friends or wasn't happy with them, and they were filed away in the cylindrical file box.
Right.
And so I finally decided, I'm going to build a layout. Even though I don't have much space, I'm going to build one. And so there was a friend of mine. I now started to kind of come out into and meet people in the hobby world instead of just being kind of a model builder of one. I joined it was an old Yahoo group of a few N scalers that I joined. And I was super nervous about it. And I was decided, I'm going to put a couple of my structures on the group, just share some photos, see what they think. And they were impressed. And I was a little bit surprised because I've always been, I mean, everybody's their own worst critic, but I've always felt I was very, very hard on hard on myself and just didn't know what kind of responses I'd get.
Right.
And so one person specifically kind of took me under their wing and really kind of championed my work and helped me and got me introduced into a few local layouts and started teaching me operations. And so I fell in love with operations. That was kind of the next love that came along in the hobby after building structures and scratch.
Can you tell us who that was?
Yeah, his name is Kelly Newton.
Right.
Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago.
Okay, I've heard the name before.
Yeah. He was one of the most colorful people I've ever met. I mean, he could swear better than anybody I know. But he was also probably the warmest, kind-hearted person I knew. And he did so much to kind of take me under his wing and kind of grow me and put me out there in the hobby a little bit. And it was really special with what he did. And so I talked to him, and we originally were going to do kind of a modular group with each other, but it never came to be, unfortunately. And so I decided I was going to build my own layout. And I told him, what I want to do. This is the space I have. I have, a palatial 1 by 7 feet. And so he was actually the one. He knew I liked doing urban modeling. And so he suggested I do a rail marine operations layout. And so I kind of ran with that, drew a track plan, showed it to him. He gave me a few things, what's wrong, why it won't quite operate well. And gave me a few pointers. I'd alter it. He then would, tell me, okay, this is good, change this is good. And then, excuse me, finally kind of settled on the design that worked and he liked as well, and started to kind of piece it together.
That's cool. And now, let's see, which direction should we go first? Well, keep going with the layout. So now you're in Provo, Provo.
Uh-huh.
And you've got this. And when did you start? Like, were you living in an apartment when you started the 1 by 7, or?
Yeah, I was living in an apartment.
And so you built it, and do you have a track? I know that now it's been on the cover of RMC. How did that come about?
So the layout I started about 8 years ago, and it took me, I'm a slow modeler. And
right.
Like I said, I like to scratch build. And so it takes a lot of time to do that. And then I'd also take, sometimes months off of modeling. And so I really didn't even get the layout to a completed looking state until last summer. Okay. So I really worked on that little 7-foot layout for about 7 years.
But that's kind of, sorry to interrupt you, but Bruce, that's kind of cool that you've had that little 1 foot by 7 foot layout that's always been there that you could go and work on whenever you got the itch to do some model railroading.
Yeah, it was something to pick at. And so it was always there. And sometimes I'd feel guilty because it was sitting over the top of a desk. It's a wall mounted shelf. And so I'd look at it and feel guilty I wasn't working on it, and then the bug would itch, and then I would kind of just blitz and do a whole bunch of work on it, and then kind of burn myself out and take a break for a little while.
But that's the thing we've had some discussion about late, Lionel. That small is becoming more and more popular because it's something you can work on and do stuff with, and it's not the big basement full of track. And certainly this article in the May 2019 RMC is an example of it. And there's quite a few of the magazines of late are running featuring smaller layouts. So I think the model railroad world has now figured out that small is okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's okay to be small.
Yeah.
Well, and it fits a niche. It's like it gives you the opportunity to say to yourself, I don't have to build a 20 by 20 layout or a 10 by 20 layout or whatever. I mean, for those that want to, of course, I'm excited about that because it's fun to see people build big layouts. But this is for people that don't, or not necessarily want to, or don't have the space. This keeps you in the hobby as much as anything.
Yeah.
All right. So is the plan? The plan is in RMC.
Yeah, the track plan's in RMC, and the layout is in there. And so you'd asked me before kind of how that came to be.
Yeah. How did that come about?
So it's a bit of a side story. So Otto Vondrak and I have known each other for almost 10 years now. And before I even started the layout, when I was just scratch building structures, a friend of mine named Frank Giacobbe and I ran a website called N Scale Limited. And it was just the two of us were originally we're blogging kind of just about our own work, and then we got to know each other and realized we're doing kind of similar things. And so we joined powers and made this little website that was just about N-scale modeling and showcasing our work. And so Otto had always bugged me to submit an article to RMC. And he'd gotten me to do a few little things that would go on their website, but I never had an article in print. Sorry?
How did you meet Otto?
So Otto just through my work. He just found me online through my work.
Okay.
Yeah, because Otto does have a tendency to kind of show up and just hang around until you finally.
Yeah, Otto's all over the place on the internet. I see him pop up everywhere, and he will be very successful with that type of kind of those tactics that he uses. He's just everywhere. I mean, you'll find Otto.
And he didn't get you into that thing where you buy one engine and you get 3 friends to buy you an engine, and then those 3 friends get 3 other friends to buy you.
No, there were no pyramid model railroads.
So. Although now that I've said it, that actually doesn't sound like a bad idea.
It's not a bad deal, yeah.
We'll all be at the top of the pyramid, and everybody else underneath us. So, but Otto, like I said, has always bugged me to write something for him, and so I never did, and then finally it was in the fall of last year, I'd gotten a call from my friend Rob Spangler, who his layout's the Western Pacific 8th sub, and his layout was just featured in the March issue, I believe,
right,
of Craftsman. And the photographer Dan Munson was out in the area photographing layouts because of the 2019 convention coming up. He was just shooting different layouts to feature in the magazine leading up to the convention.
Right.
Rob called me. He's like, "Hey, Dan Munson's here. Would you be interested in him coming down and shooting your layout?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's fine. That's okay. He's welcome to come down." So Dan came down and spent a few hours there photographing the layout, talking with me. And then as he's leaving, he's like, "Hey, just write up, 2,000 words or something, and we'll just kind of see what goes from there." And then over the few months, nothing. I quickly wrote that up, got it, a little bit of an article to them a few weeks or about a week later. And then didn't hear anything until, I think it was January, just after Otto found out he was going to become the editor right after the Springfield show.
Right.
And I get an email from Dan Munson saying, "Hey, Otto wants a couple more photos. We're looking at possibly featuring your layout." So I just snapped a few extra photos for them to add to the magazine. And then Otto reaches out to me and says, "Hey, we're gonna be featuring your layout in the May issue." And that's all I'd known. It was just the layout was going to be featured. And then Otto sent me an early proof, and it had me on the cover. And I wasn't expecting that at all. So I was very excited, and then I didn't realize it at the time that the May issue was also going to be Otto's first issue.
Right.
And so it was special having my layout featured for the first time in print in RMC, but it also made it that much more special since Otto's been bugging me for almost 10 years to submit an article to have it featured in his first issue.
Right. Exactly.
It was very special. So.
Yeah, a very cool connection.
Yeah.
Aside from just because you and Otto know each other, and because it's his first official issue as the editor, and I'm assuming it's probably your first cover of any model railroad magazine that your layout's been featured on.
Yes.
So all in all, it was just kind of a cool timing and cool.
Yeah, the stars just aligned quite nicely. So.
And so, do you now have? Do you have a track? Now you have a pretty cool Facebook page.
Yeah.
Called the Hudson Terminal Railway. So if you go to Facebook and you type in Hudson Terminal Railway, you'll find it. And you got a ton of cool pictures on here.
Yep,
so,
I've been documenting it ever since I started it there. So.
And oh, really? So the pictures go back like many.
Yep.
Oh, cool. And there's a picture here with a cat.
Yeah, that's Mr. Biscuit. He's the supervisor.
So now since the apartment, you've obviously moved into a house.
Yeah, we're in a townhome now.
And do you have any great plans of expansion, or are you pretty happy with this?
I'm happy with it right now. So I've got 3 daughters, and they're all still pretty young. And the basement is unfinished right now, and it's not a huge basement, but it's about 700 square feet.
Right.
And I'm hoping to start finishing it off this year, but part of the basement will end up being a bedroom for my daughter, and so there will be kind of about a 20 by 20 foot room that I could use for a layout, and my wife has given me the green light if I want to.
Right.
But I don't know if I want to at the moment, because we're both kind of have said that this house is just a stepping stone, and so I don't want to do anything too permanent yet.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Now let me ask a question I should ask. Is this layout that's in the magazine, is it HO scale or N scale?
It is N scale.
Wow.
That was my thought looking at it going, holy cow, this is pretty cool. It's HO. I said, look at the track plan. No, it's N.
Yeah.
And then I started looking more at the photos. I'm going, no way. There's absolutely no way.
Yeah.
But it's fantastic. The photography that Dan did, and then the couple of your shots, there's the one there sort of like with the cloudy sky scene. Yeah. I was looking at it going, well, that's a pretty cool proto photo, and then go, no, why would that be in there? But it's amazing that what N scale has become now from the early days of the pizza cutting wheels.
Yeah, I know. I always talk about how well it runs and all that stuff.
Oh yeah. And
Dan would have never been exposed to the 70s when it would only go backwards at 100 miles an hour. I'll never. I still to my last day, I'll kind of go, I have no idea how N scale survived, because I remember I'd see N scale layouts and you'd think to yourself, why are these guys putting themselves through this?
Yeah.
It's spectacular. So how'd you come up with the track plan?
So with doing a little bit of research, like my friend Kelly had suggested, to look into rail marine. And I always liked urban scenery on layouts. So I started looking into rail marine operations, and New York City really lent itself pretty heavily to everything I liked.
Right.
During most are gone today, but you used to have these isolated switching terminals scattered up and down the side of Manhattan and Brooklyn and the Bronx. Where the cars would just come in via car float, and the terminals were compact and small, and so it just really lended itself well to the little bit of space that I had.
Yeah, Tim Morris's Bronx Central is a great example of a layout that's capturing it very nicely.
Tim's layout is beautiful. His has been, when I started mine, I think he was already he was underway on his, and his was of quite a bit of influence for mine as well.
We should talk to Tim too about his original layout. Hey, Bruce. We never really have talked
Port
to him.
Kelsey. Yes,
because that was just a small layout that he built. It was the same.
It wasn't huge. No.
Yeah, and the first part was just a small shelf.
Yep.
And then he added on to that.
He added onto it, and then that's when he was adding on. It's about the same time he came up with the concept for fast tracks.
And the rest is history.
It's history. Yes.
And now he hates it when I say this. So of course you know me well enough, Bruce. And now he's bought Mount Albert lumber.
Mount Albert scale lumber, yeah.
Which makes teeny tiny lumber.
Yes.
Which means, of course, he's now a teeny tiny lumber baron.
Yes, indeed.
Which just irritates the crap out of him.
It does.
And I should stop doing that, because he's always donated very, very, very generously to my charity One More Year, which we give to the Prince Mar. So I should probably stop irritating him,
Yes.
but I think he's kind of used to it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you developed the track plan, and you're in your mid to late 20s now.
Yes.
Okay, and boy, there's 1,000 questions, but I think because of time, next thing I want to get into is I was fascinated because the other night, which would have been several months ago, our buddy Adam Pinellas, our mutual friend Adam Pinellas, called me up and was using his phone as a camera to show me, and you guys were having an operating session, and there was like 7 or 8 guys there.
Yeah, there's a few more than there should have been there. It was typically when I do an op session, I like about 4. And what I do is 2 different crews. And so a crew of 2 people will come up, run the session, and then they'll then sit down once they're finished, and then the second crew will come up and do a session. And so really only one locomotive runs on the layout, so it really can only be done by just 2 people at a time.
Right.
So it just kind of snowballed. There was a big group there that night. So
and everybody's satisfied. Like that's, I think, something, Bruce, that we really got to delve into here. So put on your thinking cap to come up with a lot of questions, because you love operations, as do I. But I mean, he had 6 or 7 or 8 guys there operating a 1 foot by 7 foot layout. So how did you come up with that idea? How did you come up with the original operations? Like, what are they based on?
The operations, I mean, it's I do car cards and waybills, and then originally it was just something for me just to play around on whenever I felt like it.
Mm-hmm.
But the layout was designed with operations in mind from the very beginning, because I've always enjoyed operations. And so 2 layouts that I run on regularly are Lee Nicholas's Utah, Colorado and Western, and Rob Spangler's Western Pacific 8 sub. And then there's a few other local layouts that I'll go play on as well. And at first, when I was in the little apartment, I never had anybody over and play on it at all. It was just, there just wasn't room.
Right.
And, but now that I've got a bigger space, and got to the layout to a stage where it's looks done, there's still a lot of work that I want to do on it, but it looks done. I spoke with a few people that are local operators as well, and we kind of figured out, yeah, I could probably get away with running a crew of at least 4. But one of my favorite things that I always love when I go play train somewhere is just the camaraderie and joking around with everybody. And
yeah,
just, I mean, it's everything always is silly and fun, and it's great. And sometimes we forget that we're there to play trains. And so, and that's how Friday night was. It was just, not everybody got to operate, but I think everybody had a great time. I mean, we were joking around, and it was noisy and having fun, and it was just a good experience.
Yeah. So, and how often would you have guys over to operate your layout now these days?
I don't know. I mean, I don't have a dedicated night. Some of the local layouts do have a dedicated night, and so, but I wouldn't mind. I'd be happy doing at least a monthly session.
And how long does it take a crew of 2 guys to operate like, how long will they be up operating the layout?
So for a new crew, it takes about an hour and a half.
Okay.
A more experienced crew, I've seen them do it in about 45 minutes.
Okay. And so you got 2 guys running the layout, and then you got the other guys hanging around shooting the crap and all that stuff.
Doing whatever. I can put a movie on, or they flip through my library of books, or do whatever. So,
I mean, that's really the core of the hobby, is the camaraderie. It's the camaraderie.
I completely agree.
So during a typical operation session, then how many cars are you moving? What's the premise? I assume it centers around the car float getting loaded and unloaded? Yeah,
so a basic session, op session, begins. What I do is I pre-stage the car float that comes into the terminal. And to operate I mean, the crews, I kind of give them a little bit of freedom, however they want to do. If they want to do their pickups, or if they want to offload the car float and classify it and do setups and pickups at the same time. But ideally, to really run it that most efficiently, the crew comes on board. They pick up their paperwork. They go through, make up all their pickups, and then they'll offload the car float and then reload the car float, and then they'll classify the cars that they brought in, and then work any industries that need to be worked. Typically on the little layout, I've got, I'd say there's probably about between 40 and 50 cars on the layout at almost all times.
Wow.
Yeah. Those little terminals, they would pack cars in there pretty
Well,
heavy.
that's true when you think about the pictures of them. They had lots of stuff sitting there.
Yeah. And I've got one industry that takes 10 cars or 11 cars all by itself.
And so they load the ferry, and then what? Do you remove those cars, or do you put on a fresh set of cars, or?
Yeah, and so what I do, each crew works a trick, and so I do an AM, a noon, and a PM float comes in.
Right.
And so once one crew's done working the cars, then I have drawers built into the shelf that I open up, and I have got other cars stored in there. And then I reclassify the float, go through and do the flip any way bills, and set up any new pickups or set outs that need to be done for the layout. And then put the cars away, stage the new ones on the float. And then the new crew comes on board and then works it. So it takes me about 5 to 10 minutes to restage the layout.
All right. And you say it's unusual that you had so many guys over the other night, but here's a couple of pictures on your Facebook page, and there's like 8 or 9 guys in the pictures here.
Yeah, that one was a tour. That was at the N-Scale convention last year.
Okay.
So.
And you said you had do you guys still have an internet N-Scale page that you were talking about?
The N-Scale Limited, no, that is gone now.
Okay.
So right now, all I do is my work. I just share on the Hudson Terminal Railroad Facebook page.
Okay. And what system are you using to operate it?
I've got just a basic Digitrax Zephyr that I use, and then I have a radio throttle for it.
Okay. And is Digitrax kind of the system of the Salt Lake City area?
No, lots of different railroads use different systems. There's a few that use Digitrax. Rob Spangler's layout uses NCE. Lee Nicholas uses RailPro.
Okay.
And then there's a few others that use NCE as well. It's probably about a 50-50 mix, mainly between NCE and Digitrax.
Okay. And so, like, it's cool that I'm excited about this, Bruce. I'm excited that
Yes.
it's a small layout that has this much operation.
Well, and it's how many times we got to say it? It's like small as the new big, I guess.
Well, and I would say,
way, but it's like Lance Minheim when we talked to him about what he puts in on his shelf layouts. It's not a pile of complex stuff. It's enough track that you can go and spend an hour, 2 hours working on and have some fun.
well, and I think too, the other thing too is like, you take somebody like Tom Jacobs that is building in his 20 by 36 foot building. Yes, Tom, I got it right. Yep. And his multi-level layout, and it has two separate floors. There's 3 steps up to the second level, and he's going to have one of those Acorn stair lifts.
Yes,
I believe
we talked him into that. Yes.
Yeah. And so, I mean, until you get to that point, or until you get to the point you're going to build a 20 by 20 layout, or 10 by 10, or 10 by 20, or whatever you build, this is actually an ideal way for everybody to experience model railroading.
It's also an ideal way for somebody who doesn't have the space.
Yeah,
or somebody who's moved and downsized.
Yeah, and if you've never
maybe they've built the big layout and now they don't have room, so they're going with smaller. Look what Trevor Marshall's done in that scale in his layout. It's not huge.
No, or
but
Tim,
it's a beautiful layout. Tim Morris's layout isn't a monster. It's it's funny.
We interviewed a fellow not long ago, Tim Klomoski, who's a retired firefighter from Miami, and his layout I think is like 14 by 12 or something like that. It's a bedroom size layout, but I mean,
Yeah.
he enjoys it endlessly, and it's not huge. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool, Chris, that you've accomplished this. You must, now that it's been in the magazine, it must really feel like it's something that was well worth your trouble.
No, it's definitely. I'm quite happy about it. Very thrilled, and kind of like what you and Bruce were just discussing. I mean, something that I've had happen actually now a couple of times where people have come over and operated that don't have a layout and are like so many that are just collecting and putting things in boxes and closets. They come and operate and see that it's just this little shelf, and they're kind of like, why don't I have something?
Yeah.
You don't need a lot of space.
Yeah, I mean, 1 foot by 7 foot will fit just about anywhere.
Oh yeah, I mean it'd fit over the top of a bed. I had it used. Right now it's on its own wall, but when I first built it, I had a desk underneath it.
Yeah, and I see you have that really cool. You have a valance. It gives you the opportunity to learn every aspect of model railroading. You've got a valance there, and I see it's really cool how you got that. You have a piece of cloth that you put on it. I'm assuming it's probably on there with Velcro or something.
Yeah, it serves two purposes. The primary purpose is to keep the cats off the layout, but it also keeps the dust off as well.
Yeah, and now one picture here. We'll just touch on this before we move on. You're what are these Blue Point controllers that you're?
They're little switch machines. So all of my turnouts are all thrown from little knobs on the fascia.
Right.
And I didn't want people to have to reach into the layout any more than they needed to. And I knew I wanted all the turnouts to be manually thrown.
Right.
And I didn't want to do any ground throws just because people have to reach in already just to uncouple cars, but I just wanted to wanted to limit the amount of reaching into the layout as I could. And so I did fascia mount, and the Blue Points were actually the third thing I tried. I did 2 different homemade versions of trying to throw the turnouts and power the frogs, and I was never happy with those. And so I found these little Blue Points that are made by
A-Line?
A-Line. I think it is A-Line that makes them. And I liked them because they would route the power they power the frogs. And they had kind of a little bit of a lower profile. I didn't have too much room under the layout because, like I said, I have these drawers under the layout that I store all of the rolling stock in.
Yeah.
And so I needed something that wasn't too big, and they just fit the space perfectly. And I threw those in, and they weren't terribly expensive. I mean, they're a lot less expensive than throwing in a bunch of tortoises. And
yeah.
And I've been really happy with them. Very happy with them, actually.
Yeah, they come with a double throw.
Yes.
So you can wire the turnout through them, and they're $14.95 each, or you can get 5 for $69.95, or you can get 10 for $129.95. So if you buy 10 at a time, they're like $12.90 each.
Yeah.
But they do a lot of work for that $12.90.
Yeah, no, I'm very happy with them.
Yeah, and there's on A-Line, they have a great a whole pile of instructions on how to install them in the whole 9 yards.
Oh, they were a cakewalk to install. Really easy to do.
Okay, cool. Well, is there anything else we need to talk to him about, Bruce? All right, I'm going to get to the meat of the subject here.
Yeah. Okay.
So after you toured around the country and you were a lost soul looking for a job in your 20s, we're around the age of 30. Where did you end up start working?
30, let's see. At 30, I was doing retail sales and was miserable.
All right.
And once I got to about 31, I landed at the Train Life in its early infancy. And at the time, Train Life was a very different animal than what it is today.
Right.
And so what got me into the door at Train Life was a couple things. So the owner of Train Life is the same owner as ExactRail. They're two separate companies, but owned by the same person named John Pastana.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I was working with my friend doing the website Nscale Limited. And also, just by luck, I was doing some modeling work for John's dad. He had a small little layout that I was helping him do some work on.
Right.
And so through these two things, John liked what he saw and offered me a job with Train Life. And so in Train Life's beginning, it was not all that different than my Nscale Limited page, but John had also purchased the rights to a lot of defunct magazines.
Okay.
Model Railroading magazine, quite a few others that I'm blanking the names of right now.
Sure,
And
like
so-
Rail Model Journal and all those.
Yeah, and so he'd bought the rights to those, and then what he was doing was scanning them and digitizing them to be free for anybody to use.
Oh, cool.
And then also what I was primarily hired on at the beginning was just to generate original content, writing new articles on modeling and whatnot. And then just kind of being the just there to promote the magazines, and then just also as just grunt scanning in all these magazines, because that takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
And so, but only a few months after, John was a part owner of ExactRail, and then John fully took over ExactRail, and he quickly moved the small team that were running Train Life and threw them over to ExactRail because they were needed there. And so that's how I got my start in it with ExactRail. And when I started with ExactRail, I was became a jack of all trades. I was thrown into doing product photography early on. And so that was kind of one of my first things I did with ExactRail, and would help out in shipping and receiving and other odd jobs at the beginning too, around in the back. And then I got involved with supervising artwork creation.
Right.
And so we had two artists that were creating the artwork, and so I would supervise and help with research and review things, and then eventually it would move up from me to get final approval to go into production. And so that was kind of my beginning into the
So how long has Train Life actually existed? Because I'm going to play not necessarily devil's advocate, but like I didn't even really know it existed up until a couple of years ago, and it didn't really look like much when I first stumbled across it. And now it seems to have picked up a lot of steam even since when I started to look at it. I don't know, maybe it was 4 or 5 years ago. I don't remember specifically, but it was some time ago. And it seems like it's really starting to grow into something.
Yeah, Train Life, I mean, is now, I think this October, it'll be 9 years old.
Okay.
But for most of its life, it was just the magazines, and then there was kind of a forum where members could get on and chat with each other or whatnot. And the magazine really, once ExactRail, all attention moved to ExactRail, Train Life unfortunately kind of fell to the wayside and wasn't getting attention. But let's see, I think it was about 4 years ago, Dan Larson, our CEO, came and had an idea of reviving Train Life. And what his idea was to actually turn it into a dealer, to start selling other manufacturers' products through it, and kind of seeing if we could make it into something. Because John had put a lot of money into it and hadn't really gotten anything out of it. And it already had. It was in need of a major rebuild. The old site was a bit of a wreck, and there were some issues with it, and so it had to be fully rebuilt and turned into an online retailer. There was issues with the magazines, and the search functions weren't that great, and so we had to go through and do a full rebuild of the magazines.
Did you not lose most of that magazine archive due to some hardware failure?
Yeah, there was a hardware failure, and we had them backed up, but everything that was uploaded to the site had been lost. And so we had to re-upload everything. And basically we had to redo, I mean, the magazines were scanned and stored, but we had to go through and upload it all again. And we had a team that we actually contracted with. We didn't do it ourselves, to re-upload all of the magazines and get it working again, and also make it something that was easier to search and to navigate the magazines with. And there was also a few magazines we didn't have that we had some holes, and fortunately a few people who searched them came to us and said, hey, I've got these ones that you're missing. We're able to then fill any holes that were there, and we were able to populate, I think, just about almost complete libraries of all of these magazines now.
Yeah, I don't think we should blow by that too fast, because this is pretty impressive that you've got for free, people can go to trainlife.com, and then they go to, let's see, let me take you, I'm going to go right to the first page, because I found it pretty easy. Let's see, scenery, model trains, under more, and you go to magazines, and you click on magazines, and there's Rail News, Model Builder, Model Railroading, Prototype Modeler, Rail Model Journal, and 1001 Model Railroading Ideas, and it's all free.
Yeah, it's all free to navigate.
Yeah, I mean...
And some of these magazines go back to, I think, the 30s.
Yep, the Model Builder it had a short span, but it was in the 30s.
Yeah, the 30s. Yeah, there's some, I mean, a lot of... We were happy to archive and have all of this. I mean, it was a lot of man hours and time and money to do it, but
yeah, this ties in nicely to what we're doing on another podcast, Lionel. A Model Builder is the one magazine Frank Ellison wrote a pile of articles for.
Yes, when we were doing Scale Legends, which by now people should have heard, the first edition and possibly the second and third editions of Scale Legends, where we were talking that Frank Ellison had done a lot of articles for Model Builder, so people could go through there and find them. This is very cool. Very, very cool. And what was, so just being a good guy, is that basically his idea?
Not entirely. I mean, it was a part of it, and there was always kind of talk, of what he could do to monetize it and make a little bit of money off of it, but he knew he wasn't going to ever really get his full return on his investment on it.
Right.
But it was kind of a way for John to kind of give back to the hobby a little bit, and to preserve these.
Yeah, I mean, it's a super cool thing that he's done. I mean, gee whiz, it's because those are all the kind of other magazines besides RMC or Model Railroader, so it's very cool that that's been done.
There's a few others that are out there that we tried to get, but weren't able to get the rights to them, unfortunately.
Yeah, and so now let's look at the Train Life website. Now is pretty hip.
Thanks.
Yeah. So are you the guy that's in charge of that, or who's?
No, that's mostly Dan Larson, who's over the design of the website.
Okay. So now, in today's world, where do you fit in with ExactRail and Train Life? Where are you?
So with ExactRail, I'm now the vice president of product. So all product decisions fall under me and the development of those. And then with Train Life, what I primarily do with Train Life is I'm the one ordering and bringing in the product. And then I do a little bit with the store of kind of planning out. I've got a lot of retail experience under my belt. Not something I'm especially proud of, but it has lent itself quite well to the store. And so we have a physical store, even though our biggest focus is online.
Yep.
But laying out the store, planning it, and setting it up so it presents well and looks good.
How big is the store?
So we actually just expanded into the space next door to us. And so we just added, the store is now mostly in a space that's about 2,000 square feet, but the whole store, I'd say, is actually probably close to 2,500 to 3,000 square feet.
So it's a going concern then.
Yeah.
And in this world of hand wringing, where every store has been obliterated off the face of the map, apparently, you guys are building your store and making it viable.
Yes, we're growing it quite rapidly. It's doing quite well for us.
All right, so now I'm going to ask you the $1 million question that I ask everybody, especially people in the industry. I personally think the hobby's growing, and I think one of the reasons it's growing is because of social media and the digital connection we now can make with each other. And where do you stand on that?
No, I agree. The hobby is growing, but it's also changing a lot. And I think because of those changes, it causes some to think that it's dying. It's just going in different directions than they may want or may not even know.
Yeah. Can you give us an idea of a different direction that you think it's going in that people may not know of?
Yeah, like two of the employees that work for us, one of them is 19 and then the other one's in his mid-20s. And so they're both very young modelers.
Yeah.
But what I think you're seeing a lot of the younger modelers is, and I don't know if I would say this is a good thing or a bad thing, but I think a lot of the younger modelers don't like getting into kind of the organized groups as much as some do. And so I think you're seeing some of the clubs and whatnot, maybe their numbers starting to die off a little bit or
Right.
not as strong as they used to. And I don't think that's because there's less modelers. It's just the younger guys kind of get in. It's becoming less. The hobby's not as much under like the umbrella of the NMRA. It's splitting off into things like RPM and Fremo, and there will be other things starting to pop up. Modular groups are creating their own standards and doing what they want, and then you're getting like me. I don't necessarily belong to any groups, but I still there's a circle of us that'll get together and operate and play and do our thing, and but there's not an organized group necessarily with that.
No, because it's easier to find people in the hobby without having to belong to anything in particular.
Yeah. I mean, even though I don't necessarily belong to a club, I've got hundreds of friends throughout the world that are modelers that I can stay in constant communication with and get tips from and help each other out with and see what they're doing, and they're seeing what I'm doing. And it's become bigger than just a local club anymore.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's become huge, and I think the big thing, personally, and this is something an idea I've started to have, is I think there's way more young people in it now.
I agree.
Because they're not. I don't know if I can say this the right way, and Bruce, you're going to have to help me out here. But they're not feeling ostracized because they try to get in a club, and the club's a whole bunch of guys over 40, 45, and 50 that you can't touch that, or we'll let you work on this when we get around to it. All these young people are finding each other on the internet, and they get to do whatever they want.
Exactly. And both of these younger kids, or I shouldn't say kids, I mean, they're both adults, but both of them that work for us have had issues with organized clubs where they've not been welcomed by members. They just are just shunned. And you hear people talking about welcoming the youth in the hobby, but at the same time, I think a lot of them feel like they don't belong. And it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, and I think that's going to just go away by osmosis because these guys are going to, I always tell this story about our resident young gun, Shane Mason, who we met, and I had done something. I had taken the wrong picture to put on to put up for a cover shot for the website, and Shane emails me, and we had a lovely exchange of emails, and I thought. And he was insisting that I had stolen the picture, which he was right. I'd taken the wrong picture and blah, blah, blah. And then I thought, okay, well, this is some guy, this 45-year-old guy living in his mom's basement. And he told me he had a YouTube channel. And I said, well, you better send me the address. I'll go look at it. I go look at it. And it's this 19-year-old kid that's absolutely on fire. He's doing installs. He's got a YouTube channel. He's got videos and everything else. And I'm like, I was totally blown away, and I go, okay, well, now you're going to have to be on the podcast. And it's from that I have started to realize I think this hobby is just going to explode.
I agree. I completely agree.
It's, well, even this thing, like I've said before, the podcast, you couldn't do this sort of thing. There's been no place where you could sit down with Chris Brimley and talk to him about, his 1 foot by 7 foot, like you got, now there's people all over the world going, Yeah, I should do that. And
Yeah.
it's like, it's crazy. So okay, so now you're the vice president of product development for ExactRail,
Yes.
and so how do you decide what a new product's gonna that like how do you get my favorite question about that is, like I've met David Leobach from Tangent, and I've met Nick Maloko, and I've
All,
met
all great guys.
yeah, and I know Shane Wilson from Scale Trains, and I know, I got a friend in Edmonton, Rob Arsenault, who's an unbelievable. He's an unbelievable artist at weathering the rolling stock, and
Yeah, he does beautiful work.
what's that?
He does beautiful work.
He does. See that, Rob? So there's the guy from ExactRail knows about you.
I know about him. Yeah, his Weather My Trains.
Yeah, weathermytrains.com. There you go. Okay, Rob, that's going to cost you a hot dog someday. And
Far from my layout now.
yeah, exactly. So how do you decide? Because people are going to want to know about ExactRail. So let's talk a little bit about ExactRail. So how do you decide what the next project's going to be?
So there's a lot of factors in there, and a lot of it comes from modelers and people that are passionate supplying us with information and asking for this, and it kind of that helps lead us into other things. I mean, it's great when somebody comes up to a show and gives you a photo and says, "Hey, I want this car. I think you guys should make it." And I'm like, "Well, you can't produce a car off of a photo. I mean, I know it's been done, but if you want it done right, you need either field measurements of the car or you need blueprints of the car. And so you need some hard data to be able to generate a car. And I mean, there's a lot of cars that people ask us to do, and it's just either if it's still on the rails, it's not in our region, or I can't just go out and, hop into the yard and put a tape to any car I want to. I mean, I'm going to be spending a few nights in jail if I do that.
Right.
But sometimes at some industries, we can get access and permission to spend some quality time with a freight car, or if we're lucky, we can actually acquire through somebody or the actual plans of the car and generate off of that. And so, I mean, there's cars that I would love to do, but just haven't been able to find the information to be able to do it.
Right.
And I'm sure sometimes it's out there, but it's just finding the guy who has it in his file cabinet in his house, or the historical society that's got it, or just trying to find that information. And so, and sometimes, I mean, I hate to admit it, but sometimes choosing a project comes down to, I try not to, but sometimes your personal preference gets involved in there too. I mean, you see that with a lot of companies where some will specialize in more Eastern cars or Western cars or of a specific railroad. That's common. I mean, it's easy to fall into what you know most.
Yeah.
But with ExactRail, we've generally have tried to keep our art selection a little bit more balanced, even though most of what we've produced has been kind of 60s and later. We need to produce more transition era, and I'd even argue earlier cars, just so we have more of a broad portfolio of product.
So what do you? Well, you can't tell me what you're working on right now. I understand. But so people will suggest. Is it kind of like one of those things, like, you go to a show and some guy will suggest a car, and then 6 months later, a different person will suggest the same car, and then all of a sudden your brain kind of tweaks and goes, geez, maybe I should look into that car, and there kind of is a process that goes like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's at the shows you get a wide variety of people. I mean, you'll get the person that will ask for this obscure car, and them and their free friends will each buy one, and so you should make that car.
Yeah.
So, I'm not going to spend $80,000 to tool this car so you and your three friends can be happy with it. And you've got to be able to pick something that has some legs to it to justify, all the tooling costs and the development costs that go into it. But I've always listened to what customers suggest at shows. I mean, just because it doesn't, I mean, you'll get somebody like, I suggested this car to you last year. Where is it? I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I'm sorry, but I mean, we can't just, pull this out of wherever for you like that. It just doesn't work. And sometimes we have to, I don't have the information for it, but we've had people come up to us at shows that have really given us some gold before, where they're like, "Hey, I'd love to see this car. I've got these plans for this car. I've got lettering diagrams," and it's just kind of like, "Okay, well, let me do a little bit of work and research into this, and if it's possible, yeah, we'll move forward with it." And so shows have been a great place to source projects from.
How long does it take from the when you first once you decide, okay, I'm gonna so when you get a couple of ideas for cars, do you guys have some, do you kind of kick it around in a meeting or two, and everybody kind of makes a consensus, okay, we're gonna go do this car, or
Yeah. There's usually a little bit of group discussion with what we want to do, what we kind of want to work on. I mean, I've got a number of cars, all new cars, already in various stages of development right now, and I've got a few planned for that I want to work on next year, and then the year after that. And so those will change and be constantly in flux. And so I like keeping it in kind of a group discussion if possible. Even a few friends that are even outside of ExactRail that I trust, I'll bounce ideas off them. And I mean, I don't pretend to know everything, and so I like to make things a bit of a group discussion if possible.
yeah, see that's a difference. That's a difference between you and me. I am always pretending I know everything.
Good.
So how long does it take from the seed of an idea to when the car is finally done?
It depends on the car type or the car. I mean, or the project, I should say. Some can go from idea to measuring to design to tooling to mass production, and if it's done quickly and efficiently, I would say at fastest 12 months to 18 months.
Right, because
But I'd say average is probably 18 to 24 months for a car.
yeah, and they're all done in China, I'm assuming.
Yeah, everything from the after the design phase is done in China.
Yeah, and so now in that whole and tell me, if there's something I ask you that you don't want to answer, that's cool.
Sure.
We're not. So with this whole thing in China, when the world came to a grinding halt, and like, were you guys kind of hung out to dry as well, or what happened there?
Well, I mean, there at first when things first happened last what was that? I think it was last July.
Yeah.
2018.
Last June, last July, yeah.
Yeah, it was just before the national convention in St. Louis, and I mean, at first it didn't feel real. We weren't really getting a lot of word from the factory themselves. A lot of it was hearsay. Talking to other friends that are manufacturers and other people in China, other factories were relaying information, and so there was a lot of unknowns initially, and so it was just kind of I don't know what to do. I mean, it was I'd never gone through this and was in a bit of a panic, and my first thing that I did was I needed to was secure tooling. That was priority one, because I'd always heard horror stories of previous factory shutdowns that have happened to other manufacturers in the past, and the government comes in, locks up the factory, and you have to bribe or pay fees or fines or whatnot to get your tooling out, and
Right.
or it ends up getting scrapped or sold off or who knows what. So priority one was trying to figure out what we could do to secure tooling. And in order to do that, I needed to figure out what assets we even had, what tooling do we have. And so I spent 2 weeks easily just generating and fine tuning and going over our list of every piece of tooling that we had, that we owned, that was ours.
Yeah.
And so we finally started to get some discussion with the factory and communication. And we also, when the factory closed, we had a project that it was our GSI bulk and flat cars. They had just the week before finished production, and we're going to be shipping the following week, that entire production. And so we were also trying to figure out if we could get that out because we knew the production was done. And so once we started communication with the factory and were able to figure things out, the good news was the factory wasn't taken over by the government, but I had been told there was some outstanding debt with the factory. And so there was a government representative there, but the factory was still running, but at a much reduced rate.
Yeah.
And so we were, for us, all that we needed to do was we just had to pay off that last production, and then the factory released all of our tooling.
Oh,
and so what we had to do is then just arrange to set up a new factory. And we moved our tooling from the factory that had, I hate to say shut down, because it wasn't, at this time, it wasn't fully shut down, but it was running at a much reduced rate. And so we moved the tooling to a new factory. And then the following September, myself and Dan flew over to China to meet with the new factory, and then also to physically inventory the tooling that we had there. And we discovered that there was still quite a bit of pieces that weren't there. There was a lot missing, unfortunately.
Now, with the tooling, you say you own it, but can you physically remove it from the factory and bring it back across the ocean for safekeeping, or is that not allowed?
No, if we wanted to, we could. We
Okay.
do own the tooling. It was paid for. A lot of the tooling that ExactRail has in its library was actually tooled here in the States years ago.
Okay.
Some of the tooling projects over the last 5 years have been tooled in China, but we paid for that tooling, and so it was ours. So there wasn't any question there with us. I know with some companies, and I won't name names, but I think there was some tooling that was made and paid for by the factory to be kind of used as shared tooling across multiple projects through manufacturers. And so the status of what happened with that tooling, I don't know. But with our tooling, we owned just about everything that we used.
Right. I see this. So, a little bit off topic, but this HO scale 72-foot deck plate girder bridge, $24.99. That's really reasonable.
Yeah. No, it's a good little price for that bridge.
Yeah. Okay. So then, how do you find a new factory? Like, you just start walking down the street and banging on doors, or what?
Well,
well, I don't.
Hello. Let me in.
Because
That's a very good question.
Yeah, wasn't one of the big problems that so many freight and locomotive companies were using the same factory?
A lot of companies were at this one factory, and it wasn't just North American companies. I'd been told there was also companies in Europe and Australia. And
okay, well, that's interesting. I'd never heard
quite a few people. So when the factory shut down, immediately, I mean, the word spread, and there's a number of other factories in China as well, and they kind of know each other or have people that have moved between the factories. And so there's kind of a little bit of a network and family there of model railroad factories. And you get some companies that specialize in doing a lot for more European companies. You get some that do more for North American companies, and you have some that do stuff for both. So when the factory closure initially happened, fortunately, I mean, the hobby's big, but it's also kind of small in some ways. And so, I mean, all of the companies that were affected, some of us, I mean, we worked with each other, kind of talking to each other. Who do you use? Or have you used this factory before? And we're able to kind of bounce some ideas off of each other. And then also, once the word spread in China about the factory closing, a lot of the other factories would reach out to us trying to get our business as well.
Oh, okay. All right. So that gives it a bit of a different picture, because the kind of the way I was thinking it's like I said, you were going down the street banging on doors. So there were other factories that had the expertise to produce what you're making, and they started to reach out to you.
Yes, I mean, a lot of it was the hope that they did, because you weren't sure their history or what these other factories have done. Some of them you knew very little about. And so you still had to do a little bit of homework with the factories to see if they were capable of producing our product.
Yeah.
If they had the skill set to do it. There was a few years ago, we farmed out doing a project to a couple other factories, just to see if somebody else could do this car, and they weren't able to do it. One of the factories we tried, they just didn't have the skill set built in to do it, unfortunately. And so there was a little bit of nervousness about committing to a factory or multiple factories. And so I think most of us companies that were burned by this have now, I think, wised up and are not going to be putting all of our eggs in one basket anymore. We're kind of spreading things out a little bit.
Right.
So if something does happen again in the future, which may happen, I mean, it's already happened 3 or 4 times already. And it very could happen again. You'd protect ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, you'd be foolish to assume that it's not going to happen again.
Exactly.
And I had a really good question. Don't tell me what it was.
Okay.
Oh yeah. How many times have you been to China?
I've only been over once. So I've only been the VP of product for ExactRail now for about almost 2 years. I think it'll be 2 years in October.
Okay.
And so I'll probably be going over again here soon. Probably again around this fall.
So now you and I have really only kind of really met over talking like this. This is our second time talking, but yeah. I feel like you'd be a fun guy to hang out with, and you like Chris, and we both like Chris, and we both agree Chris is a cool guy. Like, you seem like, I don't know if this is the right description, but you seem like you really enjoy what you're doing.
I do. I love it. I mean, I don't know what else what I would do and enjoy more. I mean, like I said early on, I was in school doing drafting, and I wanted to become an architect. And so design was always something I wanted to get into, but being an architect is, I was always warned, was super stressful and high divorce and alcoholism rates. And it's just very, very stressful job. But I love what I do. I mean, it's exciting going, attending all these shows all throughout the country every year and meeting people and meeting new people. And then, there's so many people that we see at these shows every time, and it's, we're friends. And so.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
when you're developing a new product, are you involved in doing the drawings for the tooling, or do you have others do that for you?
Sometimes I'll be involved with myself doing it. It depends on what kind of time I've got, but other times I'll contract that out or have somebody else do it.
So how many employees does ExactRail have?
Right now we have 4 people. We are not that big.
Okay, but
in both Train Life and ExactRail, both companies are run by us 4.
Really? 4 guys are doing all that?
Yeah.
Holy mackerel!
Yeah, no, we definitely keep ourselves busy.
No kidding. You guys must be going like one-arm paper hangers. I mean, really? I mean, because you got to man the store.
Yeah.
And do you occasionally take a turn at that when everybody's got the flu or something?
Yeah, occasionally. I had to do that last week when we had the big boy was in town. The 2 younger guys took off to go chase it. So I watched the store. I mean, we wear many hats. And so.
That must make it more.
I was setting some, we got some new product in, and I was out putting that out on the shelves. And then another minute I was, emailing with the factory in China, it's something different every single day. And I love that. I don't like something stagnant and routine.
Oh yeah, for sure. And, I was going to ask a really good question, but I forgot it. But so I hear you hitched a ride. You were one of the guys that was lassoed into the Ford Expedition on the big with Chris or Dan. Adam.
Yeah.
And you guys went. What was that like?
That was so. I was on the fence about going at all. I kicked it around, and I I didn't know if I wanted to go because I knew it was probably going to be crazy. And I just didn't know if I wanted to stress. And so Adam invited me to tag along with him. Like, yeah, that's fine. Since I don't have to drive, I'll just tag along and, just go there for the ride. And it was cold and wet on the Wednesday it came in. It was rain turning to snow where we were at. But it was amazing watching it for the first time come through. And I chased it where I think that was almost 5 years ago when they first brought it up from California. It came through Utah, and I chased it then, and that was neat. But this was something else. I mean, seeing it come through, it was pretty special. And then just by chance, I mean, we didn't do this intentionally. We were able to actually pace it 3 separate times, and it's just the way traffic was. I mean, it just kind of happened. We weren't impeding traffic at all, stopping people from going through because we were on an interstate, but it's just that happened. But boy, when you pace it like that, I mean, just for the few short minutes that we were able to, I mean, even though it's metal and it's alive. I mean,
Yeah.
Living, breathing machine.
Yes.
And huge.
Oh, just a giant. I mean, absolutely incredible. I mean, that if you got too close to it, it will bite.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was something special to see.
And pretty cool that it was right in your backyard. And
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I wish if I had been anywhere closer, I would have gone to see it too. I mean, because I talked to Adam about it. We actually did about an hour about it, and then we talked to Otto Vondrak and like Adam was excited because he was excited about the people and he said it was an experience.
It was absolutely. I mean, I don't think I would say it was a religious experience.
No.
It was an experience that I'll never forget.
And they're supposed to be. I'm assuming they're going to send it other places. Otherwise, it would have been a lot of work just for one run.
Yeah, the rumors are it's supposed to go to other places on the UP system throughout the year. So I don't think anything's been released yet, but the rumors are it'll be going to other places.
What's the guy's name? Ed. What the guy's in charge? The guy.
Ed Dickens.
Ed Dickens. I think Bruce, we ought to track him down and interview him.
Absolutely.
I think that'd be well worth our trouble.
Yes.
So
maybe we should go out and visit him.
Yeah.
There you go.
I think that's what we should start doing. Some road trips, eh?
Yes.
Well, the last road trip we were going to go on, though, I was listening to Viewer Post's Vacation Cruise 32 today, I was putting it out, and we were still talking about before Springfield and all that, and then you never went.
Yes, that's due to medical conditions. I was on the disabled list.
No, you were taking your shoes off and pulled the hamstring.
Yeah, I was in my. It's exactly right. I was going to see my doctor. I was prying my left boot off with the arch of my right foot. I heard a whack, 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 and ow, and basically almost fell down. And he said, "Oh yeah, you probably pulled your hamstring. You'll know tomorrow when it's all bruised and swollen and hurts." And said, "Well, it hurts now." And then I went and saw him a week later, and so this be now about a week and a half before Springfield when I saw him again. And he said, "Well, yeah, it's gonna take a while to heal up." And so I suggest for the next few weeks, don't do a lot of standing and walking. And if anybody's been to Springfield, that's what Springfield is, standing and walking. So
yeah.
Unfortunately, I couldn't make the trip.
Yeah. So are you going to go next year, or are you going to?
I certainly hope I do.
Yeah, like if you snap it.
I don't plan on busting an arm be okay because I can put it in a sling. But if it's something there's nothing to do with the legs, I'm probably fine.
Well, by now with the picnic has come and gone, and you had a swell time. You managed to make it there.
I did indeed.
Yeah. So there you go. Any question? Any other? There's you know what, Chris? How about this?
Sure.
We're closing in on the end of an hour and a half, our usual time. Could I be so bold as to invite myself to speak with you again in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Be happy to.
Okay. That's pretty cool. This is pretty cool. It's fun talking to you and all that. Oh, one other question.
Sure.
You had a question, Bruce, I think.
No, I was just going to mention something. He had talked about operations on his layout, and I was chatting with him a little bit before you got into the studio. His layout will be on the Operations Special Interest Group op sessions for Kansas City, not Kansas City, for the Salt Lake City
Yeah.
convention this year. So if you have a chance, you might be able to sign up for it. I think a lot of the spots for the op sessions are already filled, but it's interesting that here's a guy with a little layout holding operating sessions for the AppSig.
Yeah, and because this is probably going to be broadcast around the end of August or September, beginning of September, it's probably too late to sign up.
Yeah, that's probably. But I'm always happy to host a private tour if it needs to be.
Okay, got two quick questions for you.
Sure.
What's the deal with this Adam Pinellas guy? Like, is he just wired permanently?
He's a jerk.
Yeah.
So Adam,
Ladies and gentlemen, in this corner in the coveralls, weighing in at a big weight and big height.
Adam, I don't know how he does it all. It's amazing because I mean, with his N scale layout, and I've helped him a little bit on that, not much. I've just helped him lay some track, and I think he keeps lobbying for me to build the depot for his layout. But between that, his Garden Railroad and his 1.5 inch, and then working for Amtrak, and then his decoder business and custom painting business. I mean, and restoring Mustangs. I don't know how he does it.
And he has the 7.5 inch gauge.
Yeah, he's got his hands in so many different pots that I don't.
Yeah,
it's impressive. I mean,
I think we can both agree, though. We think he's a pretty cool guy.
No, I thoroughly enjoy Adam. He's a great friend. And
he's building me and he says he's making noises that he's going to build me a 67 Ford F100 too. So there you go. And because I got mad at him, he had a Chevy pickup that he customized and sold, and I went, "You sold it for that?" And he went, "Yeah." And I'm like, so I told him next time I see him, I'll drop him like a 3-foot putt. Of course, the problem is the physics problem of that is he's a man in his 30s and he's larger than me, and I'm 65. But I still think I can take him.
Good to know.
So quickly, 3 or 4 minutes, moving Pele Solberg's layout. Yeah. You were there for that because you've been there 9 years.
Very much involved with that process. I kind of skipped over that early on. Pele's layout, that was a really neat adventure. Pele, I think it was a little bit more than 2 years ago, announced that he was going through some life changes, unfortunately, and would no longer be living in the place where he was and needed to sell his layout. And he was either hoping to sell the layout as a whole piece or was willing to sell it just in sections if needed be. And so I just kind of threw out in a meeting to Dan, just kind of like, hey, let's make him an offer. Let's see what happens with this. And I thought it would just be kind of we would chuckle it off and it would go nowhere from there. But Dan kind of thought about it. And he's like, yeah, let's do that. I'm like, oh, okay. I was a little taken aback, and we started some communication with Pele, and a lot of the offers that he had were falling through, unfortunately, and so we made him our offer, and ultimately he accepted it. And I think what caused a few people early on to their offers to fall through was the shipping and customs and duties taxes to bring the layout from Denmark to the States.
Right.
And we did a little bit of homework into it and kind of had about a guesstimate what it would cost to do that. And we decided, no, let's just do it. Let's bring it in. And at the time we were trying to grow the Train Life store. It was new. And so we knew it would be something that would draw people to come into the store. And then also kind of fell in line with what we kind of did with the magazines. By preserving the magazines, we're like, no, this is a special layout. It's new, but it's a special layout and it needs to be saved. And so, I mean, we're not going to be able to go out and save every single layout out there. It's just not possible. But this one, it was a size that worked for the space that we had.
How big is it?
It's 22 by 11 feet. 11 feet.
Okay. Yep.
So it's a decent size. It's not huge.
Yeah.
But it's a good
Now, does
size.
that include all the rolling stock, or is it just like the physical plant?
Just the physical plant. He kept all the rolling stock, and I know some of those he sold off himself. And so he packed it up. He put it into a 20-foot container, and it then went on a little bit of a world tour to get here. I mean, it left Denmark and it went through a couple different ports on a ship through Europe, and then it went to Savannah, Georgia, and then it went down through the Panama Canal, and then it came up to Oakland and was finally offloaded in Oakland. And then it was put on, the container was then put onto a Union Pacific double stack train, brought to Salt Lake, and we were able to find and track the container and get some video of it on the train. And then it was loaded on a chassis, brought down to our facility. We opened up the doors, not knowing if we were just going to get a bunch of pieces after traveling around the world. And we opened it up, and it was immaculate. I mean, the damage that was done to it was like a broken tree or power line here, and that was it.
Wow.
And we unloaded it. And before the layout got here, there was no bench work done. Pele had it as just on, I think, L-girder brackets mounted to walls. And so we had to do something to support it. So I designed this kind of trestle style bench work to go under it.
Yeah, which is real. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just saw that on the website, and that is really cool.
Oh, thank you. It was kind of fun doing that. So we built that. Dan and I built the bench work for it. And then when the modules got here, we set it up on the bench work, and we had it running in probably less than 4 hours after the container arrived.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
And it was that easy to set it up on the bench work and get her going.
Yeah, it was really easy to do. And we've now moved the layout 3 times since it's been here. Because as the store grows, we've had to get new space or to rearrange things to make things work. And so it was moved into a different place, and now we just moved it a couple months ago again.
Okay, well, the easiest way to see the story is if you go to the trainlife.com website, and then you go to a store, you go to more, and then you scroll down to Utah Train Store, and then you scroll down, and there's a link there to the Dannenberg subdivision, and it's all there ready to go and it's great. There's videos, there's several articles about it. It's very informative, really cool. You're really doing a good job with the website too.
Thank you. Yeah, Dan, that's been mostly Dan. He's done a fantastic job. I've been very happy with his work on that.
Yeah, I was talking to Dan earlier, and he said you're kind of dead weight a lot of times.
I am. I mean, I go back in there and attempt to scrub the toilets clean or do something else, and I end up just tripping over my shoes and making.
But you know who's really dead weight is Scott Thornton, the guy at Proto Throttle.
Oh yeah, is he?
Oh yeah. I mean, Mike Peterson and Nathan, they're just killing themselves because he's the third man, and he's just like he's not pulling it.
So I'm excited. They're loaning me a throttle to use during the national.
It's very cool. The throttle is super cool.
I'm sure as soon after that happens, I'm gonna be one. So
they are really, really neat. They've done a super job, and Scott is a great guy, and he takes all my ribbon, and he's the 3 of them have done a great job, and we highly recommend it. All right, now we have another thing called the Kelly questions, which is a separate thing altogether after we sign off. Do you think you'd be interested in doing that?
Fire away.
All right, it's intense, pretty intense, but
okay.
Bruce, can you give out our email? This was pretty cool, wasn't it, Bruce?
It was very cool, and I'm still blown away that what we're looking at in the layout is N scale. It's like when I first looked at it, saw the pictures, I was going, "That's a pretty cool HO layout."
I know.
And I said, no, 1 to 60, no way, it's not possible. So. But it is. It's a beautiful layout.
It's beautiful. What you've done in N scale is absolutely spectacular.
It's all smoke and mirrors.
No. Well, you'll have fun running with the Proto Throttle, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
I can't wait to try it.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, it might just get lost. I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't know, Scott. I sent it back. I don't know what happened.
I'll tell it to the layout.
Yeah. If Scott gives you a hard time, just tell him Lionel's looking after it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. There we go. Okay. Email address. please send us emails because it keeps me busy for one, and we enjoy hearing what you think, any ideas you have. Email address is modlerslife, that's modelers with one L, modlerslife@gmail.com.
At gmail.com. You do that so well. You should have been
Try.
you should have been a professional.
Ha!
That's what you should have been. You should have been a professional. And we have a website. It's a modelerslife.com. There's an A there. amodelerslife.com. And if you go there, you'll see a list of the most recent shows and stuff about the crew and links to our Facebook pages and all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah, links to iTunes and Libsys and all those places to get all the podcasts. So it's cool.
Libsys?
Cool website.
Libsys?
Whatever the hell it is. What is it?
Libsyn.
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 Libsys, whatever.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. All
You
right.
click around on the website, you'll find a link.
Yeah, exactly. Go click around. Yeah, go click around on the website there. Let me see now. Okay, and I got it now. We just
Got to get the script.
Yeah, I actually have it with me.
Attaboy.
I know, eh? I bet you're more surprised. Although I've put it somewhere on my computer that I used to do the interviews with, but of course I can't find it.
Okay.
But I have it on my iPad,
Perfect.
and I have my iPad with me, so it all works out perfect.
It's like the perfect backup plan.
Yeah. So, Chris, at the absolute opportune moment, we would like you to say "Happy Rails" to you.
Happy rails to you. Okay.
Yeah. Do you think you can handle that?
I hopefully can do it and not choke in the spotlight.
All right.
Well, your buddy Adam choked.
Yeah. Well, no, he choked when we were doing virtual hobby shop.
That's true. But he choked big time.
Oh, yeah. There was nothing but stone silence. Well, Chris, as we close the barn doors on another episode of A Modeler's Life and the sun slowly sets over the back 40, I guess there's nothing else left to do except for you to say...
Happy trails to you.
Oh, so close.
Yeah, it was close. It was really close.
Oh, I said trails instead of rails.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, take two.
oh my goodness.
Well,
All
Chris, as we close the barn doors on another episode of A Modeler's Life and the sun slowly sets over the back 40, I guess there's nothing else left to do except for you to say...
Happy rails to you.
A Modeler's Life is sponsored by Big Ass Maine Potatoes. If you've got a Maine potato, you've got a big ass.
It's another Lincoln Homer.